There we go. All right, cool. So first demo.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the format being more, talk about the problem you're trying to solve, maybe your acceptance criteria, show it in action, and then show us the code where, where you kind of got the work done, and then if there's anything you kind of learned through the process.
Okay. I'm a little nervous. I apologize. Like I said, my
That's all right.
audio and video are doing kind of weird things. And
yeah.
It's been a crazy week, so I'll do what I can to walk everybody through what we did. But to start off, we worked on story 6, which was, let's get that pulled up really quickly. I'm also going to share my screen. That would help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So story 6 was to add a new item to the shopping list whenever you buy a new item. And we broke the AC down into 3 different parts, which was to create the new form, link the form to, or link the item to the token in the form, and then also along with that to link an integer representing how soon you want to rebuy that item. So just really quickly to walk through what's going on.
I can't see your screen. I don't know if there's something on it, but I just see black.
Yeah, I'm seeing a message that says you started screen sharing, but I'm not actually seeing it. I'm not seeing
it. Is it not showing up or?
Yeah, it's not coming through. Sometimes that happens when, like, it takes a while for the video to buffer and stuff, to like as you're trying to push the video out.
Monica, do you want me to? I'll share my screen and then you can talk through, and then I can.
Do you mind at all?
No, not at all. Okay. Yeah, just stop sharing your screen. I'll share mine. Okay. Or if I can just do it. You can't share your screen because I don't know.
Yeah, you have to wait for the other person to stop. Yep.
It's not even letting me. Can you share it now?
No.
Actually, try now. I just found a setting that says that where I made it so all participants can share their screen while someone else is sharing their screen. I didn't know that was a thing. See if you can do it now, Mike.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, there's it.
That's, yeah. Let me turn that off.
There we go. Now, can everyone see Mike's screen?
Yeah.
I cannot. I still see Monica Johnson has started sharing.
You have to go into
view options, and then you can choose
Got it. I'm in.
All right, cool.
Okay, interesting.
Hopefully the recording picks up Mike's.
Yeah, because I still, my screen is frozen. It's not even letting me.
Oh no, really?
Yeah. I'm completely locked out.
Are you able to exit the call, or everything is just frozen?
I'm not sure. Let me try to X out.
I guess I could take it away from here while Monica figures that out. So
yeah.
As Monica mentioned, as a user, I want to add a new item to my shopping list when I approach it for the first time. Kind of the parameters we're looking at is, present with a form that allows them to enter or indicate the information listed above. And under the add item, the item input, we want to see soon, kind of soon, or not soon. So when you go to the homepage and add an item, you'll see a form that has under the input soon, kind of soon, and not soon. And since I had fish tacos this past weekend, I'm going to add in fish tacos, and I kind of want them soon. So when you add that item, it should, as in the third test, along with the item integer to estimate number of days, unit purchase is saved. Oh wait, no, excuse me. When the user submits the form, the item is saved to the database associated with the user's token. So when you go back to the list view, it should show all the users' stuff they've added. And as you can see here, fish tacos is there.
Cool. And do you have the database there? Can you?
Yes, I do. So if you go to the database, and then first off, Nakima, thank you so much for like clarifying everything and just working with me and trying to understand like, what's going on and, always to do the latest merge. So I really appreciate you and the communication you've given me, and it's made me a better, collaborator at the same time understanding, how workflow works. So at first I wanted to share like what Steve and helped me out with in the beginning of the week. And we decided to do this type of when you're grabbing the token, so that the collection would be start with a token and then have the name and expected next purchase. However, in the previous story, they did it so that the collection starts with with the items, and then you can go list all the names, the token, etc. So let me see if my fish tacos are here. Yep. So the item I just added, the data points are the name, which is fish tacos, next expected purchase, which is 7, and then the token that I have.
So when I'm looking at the database here on the far left, is a lot of that just like can be deleted? Are we just using the items?
I believe that's what
now?
I believe that's what we agreed on. Because at first, when we did the first code, we were going to start the collection with the token.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would look like.
Cool.
Yeah. So I can absolutely delete the collections from this list after we're done with this call.
Yeah, keep it clean. I like it. It's great.
Yep.
Great work.
And then if you want to follow more of the code, most of the stuff is still from the story 3. All that we really did change for adding to the Firestore collection was this, where it should have taken me like an hour to figure out. It took me like almost like 2 days. It's just adding this next expected purchase. Again, Steve, thank you so much for your help and actually helping me understand how that works and how to lay out the radio buttons. I know it was kind of leading towards the right direction, but your way was a lot more efficient and better. So thank you for that learning experience.
And
always throw the
there.
questions out there as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that should, I mean, lots of things should take lots of amounts of time or something, like I wouldn't, don't beat yourself up over like, it should have taken this long, but it took this long. It's, it doesn't make sense until it makes sense. And then you're like, oh, how obvious. But that's, I don't know if I had a dollar for every time that happened to me in my career.
Yeah. 3 or 4 years from now, like the things that take a long time that shouldn't, you'll be like, why is it like, it just, you just different problems with the same stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. And when I was like, dealing with this merge conflict, which merge to use, I did the extra step in making sure that like the code that we worked on both merges, so that like when Nakeem and I finally like connected and I tried out the new code that I used for the last merge, it worked out fine. So like I love thinking in advance, but at the same time, like I need to make sure like my code can work with the other team's code at the same time. And that was kind of a learning experience for me too, is, just like taking a step back and like, instead of assuming like what you said, Steve, ask questions right away so that like, I can get help and then start planning, so on and so forth. And did I cover all the things I need to cover for our presentation?
Great work. I think that looked good.
Cool. Yeah, so I will delete these collections at the end of our meeting.
Cool. Nice. Thanks.
Good job.
Amber and Nakima.
Amber, do you want to do the walkthrough?
Sure.
My kids are being loud.
Oh no, I got it. We pushed everything, so it should be in the like Netify link, right? Well, not pushed, merged. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let me get back to the. Gotcha. Okay, let me share the screen. Sorry, that's important. Okay.
All right.
It's good.
Basket, yes, sir. And just for ease's sake. Yes, we did. So we were continuing from last week's work where we were working on being able to generate a new list so you can track purchase items. So like we were talking about before, we pretty much what the work that happened last week, you had the token, it was generated and put in local storage, but we hadn't satisfied the last criteria, which is like say show the user the list view.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go over here, wait, it's already, well, right now it's set up to only show whatever token is stored in local storage. So if you go here first, it doesn't show anything because it hasn't generated a token yet. So I'm in the wrong spot. And this oranges, I guess. Whatever. A word is fine, doesn't matter which. And then you navigate back and it's stored that token in local storage. So it's only pulling up my current list that has orange on it. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to go to the last thing down here because Nakima, unfortunately, I didn't manage my time very well this week. So Nakima did a good chunk of the work, which I appreciate. I pretty much did like the very first bits with like moving where we had the token generator that was already from the last week's work. So I was trying to find where. That's just moving the console logs.
I just wanted to add that we actually figured it out together because it took a while to like kind of wrap, at least speaking for myself, like wrap my head around how to approach satisfying the story. So once we figured that out, we were able to associate the token with the list item. And then when it came to showing the list, like nothing would show up. So, but it wasn't because we were wrong. It was because you needed to build an index on the Firebase database to be able to sort by name and what was the other thing? By token and name. Mm-hmm. So it just showed nothing because it wasn't coming back from the database. So like we stopped at that point when we were getting the blank list, but that it was basically done at that point, Amber. Like there wasn't much that I did without you.
Well, fair enough. I'm glad that we actively worked together. I didn't want to be a scenario where it's like, you know, the worst group project where you get like a week before it's due and you don't hear from the other two people. You're like, all right, I'm not failing. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Nice. But I think that pretty much covered. Oh, I haven't showed any code because I haven't pulled, so I don't really know where to show.
You can just hit that files changed tab if you want right there.
Oh, thank goodness for reading. Okay. So let's see, they got Firebase JSON. And also I'm making a nav tabs component because when I developed it with Michael last week, I had just put it on that homepage app, but this is like more reusable and more modular, which is like the whole point of React, which is good. So yeah, that you can like pop this version of this anywhere you want. So it's on all the pages. And then that's just different configurations for the database. And yep, adding the token generator when you go to the add item component. Oh, and that's just taking out the old nav links because now you can just put in the nav tabs. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides, oh, never mind. In the listing, is grabbing the stored token. that you generated on the add list component, so it can be put in the filter from the call to the database.
Yep, good.
All right, that's it.
Awesome, good job.
Great work.
All right, looks like Monica's gone again. So I think she's rebooting or something. So should we continue? Should we wait for her? It's all being recorded, so
Yeah, it's being recorded, so I think it's fair to continue and just let her watch the recording.
Okay, all right. So nice work, well done. Like I said, I think it's gonna be smoother from here on out. But yeah, I think we're in a pretty good place with the app. So good work. So Steve, you want to talk to us a little bit about pair programming?
For sure.
Yeah, week 3 is kind of the point where everybody, I mean, in a normal cohort, everybody would have already paired with everybody else. I think, because Amber and Monica started after week 1, like this week, I guess, would be the last week before that's true, but you still had a couple of weeks of pair programming, so you have some context for the conversation. So take it away, Steve.
All right, cool. Can everybody see the slide here, pair programming?
Yep.
Indeed.
Cool.
Yep.
And hat tip to Stacy for building this awesome deck. I just added like one thing, so it was too good.
Thank you.
Too good.
Thank you.
So pair programming, I think everyone is pretty familiar at this point. It's just kind of the basics, right? We break down the session into a person who's driving, typing out the code onto the keyboard, and a navigator, someone who's there to be like a second pair of eyes and sound off ideas. And then the idea being that in one session, we'd be rotating these roles back and forth so that it's not just one person driving for the entire session and one person acting as a navigator. And a couple of things to really think about is that the person who's driving is really focused on the low level stuff about the code, really just like implementation details, where things go, even naming. And the person who's the navigator is really thinking about that higher level view of everything. Thinking a little bit more architecturally, thinking a little bit more about the ins and outs and how everything kind of interoperates together. And kind of pairing up at the Collab Lab, just a few things to consider is that the participants here, the people who are pairing up, are typically novices. So both people are going to be able to learn a lot. It's a really good opportunity to get exposed to new ideas and kind of attack problems from the same level. And so one thing that really helps is always seeing the person that you're pairing with. So when you're on Zoom and you have your editor open, always try to be able to have a view of the person you're pairing with so you can see them. So much dialogue and communication happens non-verbally that it's really essential to have that view of the other person. And then kind of speaking of communication and dialogue, that's the key thing. You need to be able to always voice your ideas, your thoughts, and when you feel like it's time to switch roles. If you're the person who's driving and kind of have some ideas about a higher level view of the code, then it's the perfect time to say, hey, why don't you take the driver's seat for a little bit and I'm going to step back and be the navigator, and vice versa. The person who's navigating might want to jump in and hop into the driver's seat. So you can always set those times of when you're going to switch, but if you feel like you need to call an audible, do it. Just always be voicing what you're thinking. And then kind of something that like Mike was talking about, you might get stuck or frustrated. Again, both people are typically in this stage going to be novices, so you might hit some spots where it could get frustrating. And that's always a time to like work them out, but while you're working them out, throw a question out into Slack, and maybe a mentor will be able to chime in or kind of push you past that roadblock and get you moving along. And then the last thing is that it can be tiring. It can be you're both working on the same problems in two different ways, and at least for me personally, I sometimes will find it tiring just voicing everything I'm thinking and thinking out loud. Whereas when you work by yourself, you can just kind of go heads down. It takes a little bit more energy to really be vocal and communicate those ideas and work kind of synchronously with somebody. And so pairing remotely, it's a little bit different than when you're in person. Somewhat more convenient, but also with its own challenges. So two people will hop on a call, start sharing their screens, and the driver is sharing their screen and coding while the navigator is providing feedback, again, kind of giving that higher level view of everything, asking questions, kind of poking and prodding it at the ideas that are coming out. And if you were to think about it, sort of what we had talked about last time with pull requests, it's almost like the navigator is the reviewer and the person opening that pull request is the driver. So as you're working, the driver is pushing that code to the repo. And then when it's time to switch those roles, the person who was the navigator and becoming the driver can pull down that code, pull those changes, and share their screen. And so now you just swap those roles and keep going in the same way. And so kind of mindsets and attitudes to have while you're going through your pair programming session. Always have the beginner's mindset, regardless of you're learning something or you might consider yourself an expert. You always want to be going into it with an open mind and open to any sort of possibility. There are so many different, almost an infinite amount of routes to get to from A to B. So there's always a chance you're going to learn something new anytime you're doing it. It's not about teaching or mentorship. It's really about just finding a great solution to the problem at hand. And kind of like I've been saying, it's an opportunity to learn. You're always going to have like new ideas coming from someone else. And it's just always being open to those ideas and seeing them out. The driver is always going to be trying to seek agreement before proceeding. You don't want the person who's typing at the keyboard to just say, I'm just going to go off on my own and ignore the navigator. That's going to be really frustrating for both people. And then the navigator is always asking questions like, what do you think about this idea? How do you think this might work? And kind of throwing out those questions and stimulating the conversation. It's not about directing or taking over. Both of you are really trying to work in concert with each other. And here's kind of a list of some really great resources that you can read more about. The last one, Pair Programming Explained, Andrew had found, kind of going through and talking about pair programming at Shopify. And that's a really good place to start. And finally, so throwing it back to you all, how does this align with what you've experienced so far, pair programming at Collab Lab? Does it kind of align with your experiences there? Kind of seen some different things? And throw it out to you all. Anybody?
I'll say something.
Yeah.
I don't think we really kind of like of course, like I don't think we really were the driver and navigator. It wasn't very strongly defined. It was just kind of like whoever shared the screen kind of shared it the whole time, I think, for the few times that we did it.
Okay. How did that work for you? Like, how did you feel working like that?
I feel like the whole thing is so new, and I just kind of feel like with everything, it's like we're just figuring things out as we go. So I think I'll take like what I'm learning now about pair programming and try to be like more intentional about it. But otherwise, it was just like, hey, we're both on, like, let's try to figure this out. But it wasn't organized like this.
Okay. So Mike, Amber, similar experiences or?
Yeah, pretty much, to be honest. I wasn't even really aware that you were supposed to switch in one session, because it really was just like, whoever like felt comfortable taking the reins, and another person would step back for pretty much that chunk of session. So is it more like whenever you, like, I guess it's like whenever you push, you flip, or, because I guess what my problem would be with my current experience is that I would just kind of just get into either like solving the problem on the coder, or just I'm like, oh, this works. So I'm hesitant to flip it. But like Nikima was saying, it's mostly just been like meeting up for a group project, like in the library in college, as opposed to like people having defined roles, which is working, but it seems like it would like work even more efficiently if you did like keep these roles in mind and try to adhere to them.
Well, it sounds like you almost even sort of not tacitly, but you had those rules because if one person's sharing their screen, they're the only person you can type, and then the person who's not sharing, all they can really do is suggest and talk and that sort of stuff. And so flipping the roles kind of gives both people the opportunity to type and get things out. I've been in places where it's only one person the entire time, and it just kind of felt frustrating that you could only suggest things or you could only type, and flipping those roles kind of gives you the opportunity to look at things at the low level and also kind of take a step back and be able to kind of see and influence how things evolve at the high level from that bird's eye view.
Yeah, I think going on with Nikema, what Nikema said, the remote pair programming was like really neat to me. And I understood the established roles, but it was really hard to do the switch. When I pair program in person with my friend who works at Google, he like did this kind of like thing where 15 minutes I'll be the driver, and then we'll switch every 15 minutes, and that was kind of like overwhelming in a sense, because like you want to see what they're doing, and all of a sudden it's your turn, and then you forget like what you were gonna do. So I think having the more approach of like maybe the first session I'll be the driver and you can be the navigator, and then switch next session. I don't know what the best practice of doing that is, but I think it's still just like a learning thing for me and understanding how to be efficient in programming remotely.
For sure. Yeah, and I would highly encourage everybody to try. Maybe 15 minutes is too fast, maybe even pushing it back to 20 or 30 minutes. But I think it's really good to get the experience of flipping it in one session and being able to look at things at low level and get the high level view, and you both are able to kind of weigh in and bring sort of diverse views into what that is. Because if you're pairing with one person, you're obviously not going to be thinking the exact same way as that person. And so it's great to be able to get both views from both angles.
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions is a lot of people think that if you're not the driver, you're not really doing much of anything useful, but it's really an opportunity to see, sort of how does the approach fit in with, the rest of the app? Like, is it kind of, like, is there a more efficient way to do it? You can be also like, the driver is kind of busy trying to get something working. You can be the one that's kind of off Googling, like, oh, here's an example of another way to do it that's going to maybe be a little simpler or something. There's a lot of useful things you can do as the navigator. But then by switching, you get to have both experiences, and it helps you kind of shift your frame of reference a little bit, so that the next time you're a driver, like if you're just been the navigator, you have maybe kind of fresh eyes for it or something too. So there are a lot of ways to do it. Like some people do the kind of the strict, almost Pomodoro technique or something of like set a timer and switch on the timer. But you can, do it more just like kind of maybe negotiate with your pair partner, how you want to run these things, and maybe just switch when it feels natural or something too. I mean, those are both totally valid ways to do it.
Yeah, and playing off of what Andrew's saying, the driver can totally say, "Oh, I have this great idea. Well, I'm typing this out. Could you look this thing up in Google, or like look up the docs for something like that, and go work it out?" Like that's a great way of just almost splitting your brain in a sense, where you can really focus on one area and let the other person kind of tackle that. And when you hit the point, whether you set a timer or whether it happens sooner, where one person says, "Hey, I really got this idea I want to work out. Let's flip roles and handle that." Like, that's totally valid. It can be really fluid. The other thing I would suggest too is when you do kind of set these timelines of when to switch or not, it gets you into a tighter way of thinking, and that you're making smaller commits, which are always good. If you have a really small commit where you're only changing a few lines of code, that really makes your work tighter, and it makes it a lot easier to go back later and see the thought process of how that feature evolved.
I love what Stacy said too about asking questions, because as a navigator, that can be part of your role as well. Is, okay, I see what you're doing there, but can you explain to me what you're trying to accomplish? Or, what's your, like, what, if you're doing this, like, what are you about to do next, so I can kind of understand how these things fit together or something. So, hopefully the pair programming is very verbal as well. Like, it's a lot of talking of like, you understand that? No, I don't. Let's go figure that out. And, all those things, just kind of like, that is very kind of like, I mean, it really is like the heart of collaboration for kind of remote work, I think.
Definitely. So we thought a lot about like when to do this presentation on pair programming. And we waited to this point because you've totally been pair programming amazingly this far. Maybe you haven't been doing it this way, but you've been collaborating, and that's the beauty of the whole project. And you've been doing it amazingly. We bring this presentation in now so that you can learn out how to do it more efficiently. So you've done it, you've seen what works and what maybe doesn't work and what makes you feel good and what you might have struggled with. And now you can take what you've learned from this presentation about the driver and the navigator and asking questions and researching while somebody else kind of does the mechanics of it, and apply it to your sessions going forward, so that you can really spend a lot more time learning and exploring and being efficient, rather than kind of struggling to find balance and seeing, how pair programming should work. So you've been doing amazing. Now let's 10 times that and like really crush the pair programming. The end of my rant.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, so that's it for me on pair programming. Do you all have any other questions for me, or Andrew or Stacy?
Yeah. Any other thoughts from y'all? No.
I think Steve touched this last time when I synced with him, but like the coding between pair programming, how does that look like? Like, I know we talked about PR drafts, but how can we be communicative, have better communication when, we're working in between syncs? I know Slack sometimes, like with text, you can't really show the emotion. So I think what Nakeem and I were going through is like, thought we were both upset at each other, but we really weren't. We were just like really being, constructive, like we want to get this right. So how do we not get to that point where like we're feeling like, it's becoming hostile, even though it really isn't, because we're not that type of people.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, at Zapier, because we're fully distributed, it is animated GIFs and emoji everywhere to try and convey just like that, hey, like there's no stress here. I just want to, kind of want to figure this thing out. So we just go overboard with all that stuff. And it's when I first started it there, I was like, what is going on? It's just like animations everywhere, color everywhere, and I finally figured out that the reason for that is because of that lack of context. Sometimes you don't have somebody's expression or their tone of voice to read. And so people are trying to convey that, some other way. So that's one way with maybe the written stuff, is to, and just kind of being, just kind of careful about how you word things, or whatever, and say like, hey, I love, there's another thing we do is a lot of kind of the sandwich style thing of like, hey, I love I love the direction you're taking this. I don't understand this piece. Can you help me understand it? That kind of pattern, and, I think that just goes for any time you're kind of working through a text medium. Those tips are helpful.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was only going to add onto what Andrew was saying, in that on top of GIFs, emoji, and everything like that, it's always, I think I can say we're all good people here. We're all trying to do good work. And so a big part of it is just assuming the positive intent, assuming the best intent of whatever that person's saying. You said it, Mike. You're both trying to do good work. You're both trying to really nail this, and go off of that assumption. If you feel yourself getting stressed, or your level of, anxiety, or like the feel you don't understand what the intent might be, I just like take a breath and be like, all right, I know we're both doing the same thing, and even reach out and say like, hey, I might be feeling this way. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Like that can go a long way too.
Yeah, and this like isn't necessarily involved with what you guys experienced, but I found too that a lot of that kind of heatedness was, I don't know the word I'm looking for, can be avoided with a really solid plan. So it didn't necessarily, like you guys weren't pairing together necessarily on one thing, but within your pairs, if you use your wiki to be like, okay, we're pairing, we're collaborating, we're making a lot of progress. Now we're going to separate ways. You're going to tackle these very specific things. I'm going to tackle these very specific things. So when we come back together, it's all going to work. And if you can really like flesh out a good plan before, like both really understand it before going your separate ways, then a lot of that tension can kind of be reduced because you have a solid plan you're going after. as opposed to just kind of like, I don't know, am I stepping on somebody's toes? Am I doing this right? You know, because you did a good plan. So plans and emojis, they're my favorite.
What was the Morgan quote, Andrew? 8 hours of coding can save you an hour of planning, or something like
exactly, that. Yeah. Yeah, and I found, so we had a little talk about positive intent on Twitter, and I made the point that it's in an environment that's not high trust, that mantra, you can kind of like tell somebody like, oh, you should be assuming positive intent here, when really somebody doesn't have the best interest in mind, right? And so like I think at Zapier, like a lot of people have to kind of get over that a little bit. They start to trust that the people around them really do have their best interests in mind, and then that mantra really works. Like it really kind of starts clicking. We're trying to build the same kind of thing here, where we trust each other, and we all, we're all focused on the goal of learning how to collaborate better. And so there's no drama, there's no politics, any of those kind of things. And so we really can, I think, hopefully like kind of open up and just like trust each other's intent. I think everybody here is, just I'm, so impressed with everybody, and what everyone here is so focused on learning and getting better. So hopefully that works here, that assuming positive intent thing.
Yes, I'm so excited too to see like what your pair programming sessions look like after this. I know we'll hear from Nikema and how pair programming goes for her, but like you should all kind of like let us know in Slack, like I tried this or we tried this and this did or didn't work, just so we can kind of like see what's happening. I'm excited to see kind of how this goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Pair programming is like my favorite thing in the world. It's so amazing. It's where like the true collaboration and learning happens. And I think everybody should be pair programming all the time. It can be a little controversial to say things like that, but I firmly believe it.
Yeah, some people aren't big fans of it, but I think it's great. And it's depending on if you're pairing and you get stuck, and like it'd be really good to have one of the mentors jump on, ask in Slack if if we are available, we'll jump on and help you get unstuck. Not going to guarantee that we're going to be available, but if we are, happy to do that. So I've done that with people before, and like especially like merge conflicts, trying to work through some of that stuff. So.
And when you don't do pair programming, you end up having a pull request and review, which is basically a slower, more frustrating pair programming session.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yep.
That's true.
Because once you open up that PR, you're like emotionally invested in that code, you've checked it. Whereas like when you're pair programming, it's all happening like before any of that even occurs.
And like once it's in PR, it's all like written communication. So it's like more of that tension kind of starts creeping in. So it's like you can just verbalize it all on a pair programming session. So much better.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions or any other last closing thoughts by anybody? No? All right. All right, cool. Thanks so much. Good work this week.
So good.
Yeah,
you're all doing great.
See you on Slack. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Bye everyone.
All right, thanks. We'll see you later.
Great work.